The date is June 28th, 1914, and the heir presumptive is dead. Shot in his open-top car by a Serbian national, Austria-Hungary's people demanded justice, and Franz Joseph, the Emperor of Austria-Hungary, was more than willing, but decided to take a vacation first. So on July 23rd, 1914, he and his cabinet sent the ultimatum to Serbia, which demanded untenable things. The only way Franz Joseph felt that they were safe to send the ultimatum was if Germany backed them, and they did, in full, no matter what action they chose to do. This is often referred to as the blank check. This compilation of events is most commonly known as the July Crisis. 2 days before the declaration, Wilhelm II is recorded having second thoughts on the war after the Serbian response. Many generals heard of the Kaiser's change of heart, and most people in his cabinet were enraged by such a sentiment. Some are recorded saying, "Unfortunately, peaceful news. The Kaiser wants peace." He even wants to influence Austria to stop continuing further. If the Kaiser didn't want war, the military threatened a coup d'etat. The Kaiser only heard rumors and was never told of these intentions, but continued to back Austria. Nobody was ready for the war that was so carelessly begun. On July 28, 1914, the war had been started by Austria. Germany declared war as well, and the Entente alliance was set into action. The Entente, which was made up of France, Russia, and Serbia, and later Italy and Britain as well. The Central Powers were made up of Austria-Hungary, and later the Ottomans and Bulgarians. The Germans had a plan to invade France and knock it out of the war quickly. It was called the Schlieffen Plan, and went as follows. The German army would advance through Belgium and Luxembourg, which was protected by Britain, and move through the mostly undefendable north. This plan was tenable, but had no real chance of success. After trying to ask the Belgians to move through their territory, which they declined, the Germans declared war on them and swiftly advanced throughout Belgium. The French responded and began to try and flank the German troops, which the Germans foresaw and tried to outflank them. This continued until they reached the sea and began to dig trenches, which would become a staple of the Western Front. The Germans planned on waiting to attack the Russians until France was dealt with, but this would have to wait. The Russians had been much better prepared than the Germans anticipated, and had begun to invade German territory. The Germans, worrying about their eastern front, sent more troops and material, and began to push them back. The outcome of the offensives were still unknown, and a decisive victory unable to be achieved. That was until the Battle of Tannenberg, most famously known for the battle with the Teutonic Order. The battle resulted in the annihilation of the Russian army, and very few advances into Germany would ever be successful again. That wasn't the case for Austria-Hungary, though. They were having a not-so-good time fighting the Russians, and fighting in general, but thanks to the Germans, the Eastern Front would be closed. With the Serbs on their last legs, Italy was brought into the war, and also didn't fight well, but luckily for them, they would be fighting the Austro-Hungarians for the majority of the war. The war was now a full-on stalemate between two war-weary alliances. To try and quicken the end of the war and keep the U.S. out of it, the Germans tried to get Mexico to attack the U.S. and join the Central Powers. Mexico promptly declined, and the U.S. promptly joined the war. With fresh troops from the Americans arriving, the prospect of victory seemed almost impossible, and most Germans were tired of war, and within a year, the war would be over.